to YouTube to be
Going
ready.
over to YouTube.
We are live. Welcome, guys.
I want to wait a little bit because it still kind of goes off in the minute.
Really?
In the beginning. In the minute.
So now, should we wait till it goes till this switches over?
Yes.
Oh, let's turn off your phone.
That's good too.
Welcome to From the Ground Up From the Ground Up podcast episode number whatever. We are Joe and Melissa. If you guys are new to our podcast and everything, this is our way to introduce people to the world or learn more about different species and different projects and different people. And yeah, it's our weekly thing we do for all the new people.
And if you would like to get a sticker on our fancy new background here, which Dan just pointed that out immediately.
That it's fancy.
But if you guys want to send us a sticker, message us on Instagram or Facebook or any of that, and I'll give you. I wish we had a P.O. box.
We definitely need to get Philly herpetoculture.
I don't know if Matt has stickers.
I feel like he does. I don't know. We'll have to reach out to him. Right now, we just have Tony Jerome's, Ian's, and Austin's over there. I guess I should say
that's
everyone's
Ian
name. Sorry. Ian of S&J Reptiles and Austin of Ragebeard Reptiles. So, yes. I mean, we're like the 30th people in the world to do the stickers. We're not new or creative, but let's keep it up. We're the only people that
Ryan's
show it in a
he
podcast.
Gave us a sticker. I don't even know what he's. Oh, now I know what he's talking about. How dare you, sir? I will not put that on the wall.
I don't know. Oh, yes, I know. I threw that out. It didn't even make it home.
What? You threw it out?
Yeah, I don't want that.
No, I wanted it at least. It was.
I think he gave us two, and I don't know.
I
threw it on the ground. I said
disrespect.
Okay, people don't know what we're talking about. This is weird.
Ryan says he hates you.
Well, I hate that animal.
Wow.
Okay, this is so off topic. Let's talk about our stuff. Guys, if you live in the Philly area, we will be at the Oaks, PA show November 9th. And if you live in the New York area, we will be at the White Plains show November 10th. And then if you live...
We'll be significantly more tired at White Plains than we will be at Oaks.
So if you want to bring us, Red Bulls or coffees, we wouldn't turn them down. And if you live in the Philly, Gettysburg, Philly suburb areas, we will be at the Gettysburg show November 23rd. I think that's it. It's a very busy November.
Yes.
If you haven't watched our new video, go check that out. It is about Tinley and all the fun stuff we did. And
I guess we should talk about this just for the podcast listeners. You did it. We both did it. But more importantly, I was worried about you doing it.
We did it. We had a post-Tinley podcast already. We talked about doing it.
Oh, yeah. Damn. Forgot about that.
We should say what it is.
Yes, tarantula. We both held a tarantula.
Yes, we already did that. So, but yes, we did both hold a tarantula. And if you want to see all the lead up and my heart palpitations leading up to holding the tarantula, that is all in the video.
And we even I held, you didn't end up holding my first anaconda, which is weird. I've just never had a green anaconda, or I've never had the opportunity to hold a green anaconda, which is just kind of random. But
yes, so definitely check out that video. And check us out if you don't already follow Snake Discovery, Emily and Ed. We have a little feature in their Tinley video, so check them out too. Anything else? We have t-shirts available as always. Oh, and we updated snakes on the website, Theportcitypythons.com. So please check out all the new uploads to there. All those prices include shipping.
Bam. We did it.
Okay, you ready to
We got all of our, what do you call that in order?
I don't know.
But we did it. We got out of the way. We got our ducks in a row.
I always mess that up. I's dotted, T's crossed. Now introduce our guest.
So today's guest is a biologist from North Carolina. His name is Nathan Shepard. He takes amazing pictures as well as herp spots pretty much all around the world, and especially North America as well as Central America and Mexico and things like that. So Nathan, thank you so much for being here. And can you give us a little intro on what you are, or who you are, and what you
do? So yeah, I'm a biologist for the state of North Carolina. But I'm just a passionate field herper as well. I'm also the vice president of the North Carolina Herpetological Society.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which we're putting on our fall meeting in November 2nd.
So are there multiple like subgroup? I mean, North Carolina is a big state. Are there multiple like subgroups in, or there's just one?
Just one.
Gotcha. Is it based in Raleigh?
It is based in Raleigh, but so our fall meeting's in Raleigh every year, and then our spring meeting is somewhere different, and we alternate coastal plain, mountains, Piedmont, every third year. So
Piedmont Triad.
Is this is it a long-standing herp society?
It is. It was I think it was 76 was when it was made, when it was initiated.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. We just celebrated our 40th recently. I can't do the math. 2016, 17.
That's awesome.
Wow. And how long have you been involved with the Herpetological Society?
I've been doing it for the past, I've been a member since the mid-90s when I was in middle school. But as a vice president, I've been in that capacity for 4 years.
Awesome. Yeah. And I was wondering, because I saw so many pictures on your Flickr where you were super young. And I was like, oh my God, like how long have you been doing this?
Well, that leads us into, tell us how you first got into reptiles.
Like most people, catching box turtles and water snakes. But I would say for me, I went to the Greensboro Nature Science Center and I did Lego camp, and I didn't like the people at Lego camp. And so I did reptile camp, and I was hooked. Got to see a Burmese python eat. I was like, that's amazing. And then from there, it was more playing in the woods, and then just kind of kept turtles in middle school. Got my first, I think I got a decay. I kept a decay for a while. Then I got a corn snake, which I still have. He's like 25 years old now. Somewhere in like middle school. And so since then, I had leopard geckos through high school. I would keep and breed leopard geckos. And then, into college. Then I went to NC State for undergrad. And
we lost you for a moment.
Oh, me?
Yeah, I think our internet messed up.
If you were talking that whole time, that's amazing. And then you could just keep on going.
But no, we have to backtrack because we didn't hear. Okay, where did we hear him last? He got to see a berm eat.
Yes, reptile camp.
I think that's the last thing I heard.
Okay. And then in middle school, I got my first corn snake. And he's still alive. He's like 25 years old now. And then in high school, I kept and bred leopard geckos. And then in college at NC State's where I got really into field herping. I kind of did it in my backyard, but field herping in the sense of let's go to the Sandhills, let's go to the coast, I really want to see a pygmy rattlesnake, let's go look for them, that kind of thing.
So just to bring it back a little bit, what exactly is reptile camp? What did you do at this?
Oh, it was a thing for elementary school kids to go and learn about reptiles. Like, I don't even remember it other than that Burmese python eating.
I don't think I've heard of anyone else getting to experience a reptile camp. I don't think that's offered too many. I mean, maybe it is.
Probably not. Know. One of the other things I did early in life, and it's hard to remember that long ago, but the Piedmont Environmental Center near High Point, Greensboro, which for people that live across the country, they're not going to know where that is, actually had a herp camp. And it was a 3-day where you go and you spend the night and you just learn about herps and go find them.
That's awesome.
That was really what got me going.
Oh, childhood Joe would have loved that so much.
No, instead I went to farm camp where I baled hay and milked cows.
Wait, I'm sorry. Farm camp?
That still sounds cool.
That sounds like free manual labor.
Yes, it was exactly that. And then we also slept in the woods and did manual labor and then slept in the woods. I mean, it was fun.
And your parents paid for this?
And like we played in the creek and made things out of the clay. And yeah, and it was like half a mile from my house. So
nice.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, reptile camp or herp.
I mean, what did you do? What?
I went to sports camp,
Nerd.
Yeah.
I mean, childhood me would not have liked herp camp or reptile camp. So, because adult me didn't until I met you.
True.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So how did you go from, how did you kind of get connected into that field herping realm?
So in undergrad, I had a really good opportunity. I met a few people that were my age and had the same passion, and one of them is some people might know Kevin Messenger. I can't remember his field herp form, Sister Guru maybe, but he does a lot of work in China now. But he had a project in South Carolina going and basically road cruising, doing mark and recapture studies on snakes in the Sandhills. And so I'd go down there and help him with that project. And that's kind of, I mean, I herped before that, but that was my first time, marking an animal, finding, I'm trying to think, like a mud snake. That was my first mud snake during that era. So, and it was the first time in my life where I had like friends that were into the same thing. I'm sure for a lot of people pre-internet, it was hard to find reptile people that were into reptiles. Now it's fairly easy.
Right. And so your first kind of how you got into it was in a pretty legitimate way then. So was he like a herpetologist or field biologist?
He was a little ahead of his time. He was just he just got hooked up with the right people, and we were at a national wildlife refuge doing herp surveys by ourselves. It was all under the guise of his advisor, Dr. Heatwall, who lives in Australia now, but he's a big-time herpetologist.
So can you enlighten us on, I mean, it's sad I know so much about North Carolina, but nothing about the Sandhills. Like, why are they such a big, you mentioned them a couple of times, like, why are they such a, like, interesting place? And, like, why is it such a big herp place?
You really have a lot of coastal plain species coming into, I wouldn't call it the Piedmont. It is part of the coastal plain, but it's right at the fall line. So you can go quickly from very Piedmont-looking habitat to where you're in longleaf system. And so longleaf pine is the predominant coastal plain, southeastern forest type. And to get that close to Raleigh, and along that fall line, you have like interesting soil. So you get really xeric, well-drained soil. So you just get, this place called the Sandhills. So it's a rolling topography of sand. And it's you get a lot of different species.
Okay.
To name a few that people are interested in, like pine snakes. But you also get, neat things like pine barren tree frogs. They're found in the Sandhills in North Carolina and the pine barrens in New Jersey and down in Florida in the Panhandle. But you get them in that area. So.
And what are some other like highly sought out species there?
Well, southern hognose is one. There's a few. Most of them are protected, but there's tiger salamanders in that area. There's other things that are on the edge of their range. So you get they're not quite there, but they're in a few places, like maybe salamanders, which is a salamander not a lot of people really know about. It's endemic to North and South Carolina and a little bit of Virginia. And there's stuff like that. Trying to think of other really rare things. There's a lot of things that we consider priority species, like even barking tree frogs that aren't necessarily rare, but they use habitats that are definitely declining. But yeah, it's just a lot of species in that area. And when you move east, because of the way North Carolina, a lot of the coast is with bays and stuff, you get a lot less sand ridges. So you don't get as much. It's neat because it's just so much of that topography and that soil type.
Right. And is there like totally different species that you have to look forward to in areas just outside of that as well?
Yeah. You get just outside of the Sandhills and you start picking up southern coarse frog, which south of North Carolina is a really common species, but here it's very rare. And then gopher frogs. Gopher frogs are right on the Sandhills, but they're mainly a coastal plain species. But yeah, and they're just not doing good overall throughout the whole range. But yeah.
And personally, for you, what are your favorite species that you could find out there?
One of my favorite is pine barren tree frogs. It's just a neat little frog. I spent a few summers doing work on those. I did some I was radio tracking those, and trying to find new sites. And I just had a lot of fun going out in the middle of the night all summer long till like 2 a.m. looking for them. So
We're being
I have a
slow,
little
but we're
bit.
trying to pull up a picture.
Oh yeah. So I have a little bit of like a romantic thing with pine barrens, and the fact that like it's just a fun, even if I don't hear them and I just go out, it's like I'm in that habitat. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah.
Yeah, so here I have the picture of this guy right here, the Pines Barrens tree frog.
That is an amazing picture.
Whoa, what are they doing here?
So that is pair and amplexus, of course. But females are hard to find. You tend to find the males calling. And that year, that was the first female I found. And they were actually not together when I found them initially. I went in with a researcher for Florida State University, and she was doing a genetics look at all across the range. And we found a brand new site, and we found 11 in like 15 minutes, which is kind of ridiculous.
So where are the females usually?
They're just silent. So you just kind of have to, when you see a calling male, you have to pause for a minute and think and look kind of around it. That female was, when I found it, right next to the male. They were about to hook up, but they just hadn't locked up yet.
And that female looks considerably larger than that male. Are they sexually dimorphic?
A little bit. Females are larger. They're about a gram and a half larger when they're gravid.
Gotcha. So, I mean, and that might be also a young male with a mature female.
It could be, yeah. Yeah, they don't live long. We don't have a lot of data for wild populations, but there was Riverbank Zoo in South Carolina was doing captive breeding, and they tend to suggest they don't live past, on the average, like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah. They had one that lived 9, but yeah.
Wow.
Very quick. Very short lifespan.
So where you guys found them, was that like range extension or anything like that, or is it just somewhere where you wouldn't?
But it was an important location in the fact that we know where there's a lot of South Carolina populations and a lot of North Carolina populations. And so she really wanted genetic samples as close as you could to getting between the two populations. And we went and looked at a historical site that was fenced off, and we didn't hear any calling. And I'd been in the area of this property before and just not heard them. And then that night we went out, and it was just that night where a lot of them were calling.
So can you go through exactly how that works at night and like trying to find these calling males? Like what's the exact method you use there?
So with any time when you're herping, Google Earth helps. Then getting on the ground and looking at those sites. There was a county I won't mention in North Carolina where there's no known records, and I went to like 40 historical sites in this county, and really a couple counties, and didn't find any. And I said, you know what, enough of going to historic sites. I'm going to start, like, I'm just approaching this, and I didn't know where they were found. I'm just going to try to find a new site. And so a lot of it's going and seeing the habitat during the day. Of course, you can drive around and hear them at night and see the habitat at night, but seeing it during the day, you can see through the trees. You can see where the appropriate, like a seepage slope is, and you just go back at night and see if they're there.
So this may be something a little bit not in your wheelhouse, but Brian, our friend Brian Holt, I believe he works for the state of Alabama, and he was just worrying, or he was asking, not worrying, were samples taken of those tree frogs from the disjunct populations in Alabama and Florida?
They were definitely taken from Florida, so that's not my data set. I was just helping that researcher, so I'm not sure exactly if she got around to sampling Alabama, but she did sample Florida since she was stationed in Florida. But yeah.
So basically you're comparing those two animals, seeing if there's some, distinction between the two?
Yeah, if there was something distinct or there was a more complex story to tell. And I can't really speak to her results because what I saw was very preliminary. But yeah, I don't know if that is published yet or not.
And do they all have the same phenotype as far as striking green frog like that with that black stripe?
Yeah, pretty much. I've seen anomalies in like, you have a stripe that goes across the leg, or it'll go from the eye down to the lip, some weird anomaly, but nothing crazy. There's no orange ones out there or anything like that I've seen.
Are your ears trained enough, like you've done enough where like you can recognize like different calls of different types of frogs?
For North Carolina, yeah. For the Southeast, yes.
And can you reenact them?
Oh.
I really wanted to ask if you could reenact them, but I wasn't going to.
So pine barrens are really easy. Like the only thing you get it confused with would be the green tree frog, and you just listen to the two for a minute. They're pretty easy. But things like certain chorus frogs, I've definitely had that night where I go to a site. I'm like, okay, I'm hearing southern chorus frogs. And then later, the next day, I listen to that clip. I'm like, that does not sound like southern chorus frogs. So there are a few species that are similar that sometimes, depending on where you are, you can kind of be confused. So I was sampling for southern chorus frogs one night, and then I ran into an area where uplands can be. And that got really confusing after like 4 hours of listening to kind of in and out of both of them. And, and then I would find sites where, well, at least one site where both of them were present, which really drove me crazy. So, but by and large, yeah.
How many years of herping and doing this do you feel like did it take you to really like train your ear?
So what I think did it, because I did it for years where I would, in the spring or the fall, listen for frogs. And then after winter comes, spring next year, and then I'd forget half of them, or I'd get confused. And so it was really the first few years where I was in the field almost the entire year. And I really got to sample. I didn't go out for just a few nights to listen. I was out a lot, like 80%, 70% of the nights. And then that really, 1 year of that, and you pretty much have it in your head.
And now every time you go out, are you also recording audio?
I try to either take a visual or acoustic voucher.
And then is there some type of like database of frog calls that you use to compare them to?
No, there isn't. There's a lot of people that have worked with software trying to like where you can throw a frog call in a software and it's going to tell you what's calling. That has just not been perfected. There's some species it works for, but for things like gopher frogs, there's so many things like rain and certain cars driving by that it just doesn't seem to work out. At least that I've seen. I don't have that software.
Frog voice recognition.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Right there.
I feel like you'd have to get some crazy intense like mic that cuts out those
depend on the quality of
those road noises, and you'd have to get so close to the animal that I don't even know how you do that.
I mean, for just when you're taking a sample, you're standing there, directional mic gets a really good picture most of the time. But usually in that sense, what you're trying to listen for or what you're hearing. It's really, people have tried to work on it when they're doing these, what we call frog loggers, where it's a box with microphones and you program it to record for 2 minutes every hour. And so you put those at your pond and you leave them there for like 3 or 4 months. And then you have, hours and hours and hours of data or of music to really listen to, for lack of a better word. Then you kind of want to throw it into a computer and it just tell you the answer.
Right. If you you put in the sound and you put in what it is, and then it like make the, if you input all the sounds, and then you make it like look for those same like inflections, or I don't know.
Bat people have a similar thing, and it seems to be a little fleshed out because I think there's more money there, but it's still not
more money in bats.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, for bat sampling, yeah, I think so. Versus frogs. So I think that's more fleshed out. But I don't know. Frogs aren't that difficult. But yeah.
I could not tell you one
frog
sound. Stolen ribbit. Like that's what I teach my kids, and that's my level of frog sound.
Well, it's easy when you start out a year and go from January into April. And you don't start out with 10 different species at one time. You start out, you tend to just get spring peepers, and then you get your chorus frogs, and then that's only 2 frogs, and then by March, then you got a handful that's coming out, depending on where you are.
And these frogs are almost calling like year round, like even in January.
So we have winter breeding amphibians, and then we have growing season breeding amphibians, and they overlap. They don't read textbooks. So spring peepers will start calling in the fall whenever it cools down. But by and large, most of the breeding I've seen is like December in North Carolina, December through March for spring peepers. And then you get stuff like southern chorus frogs, ornate chorus frogs, and gopher frogs as you're getting further into the year. And then by the time you start getting your lows out of the 50s, you could potentially get some some hylids, barking tree frogs, green tree frogs, stuff like that. And once you get those, you're in growing season. And that's usually April.
Okay, because our podcast is not linear, I want to back it up a
Oh,
little bit.
I had a question about frogs.
Oh, okay. Wait, you ask yours first because mine isn't about frogs.
Okay. So those winter breeders, they're still like active, normal, everything like that?
Yep. There's winter breeding salamanders as well, tiger salamander. They typically move in the ponds. I think of Thanksgiving, but I've seen them in October moving in the ponds. And their breeding is somewhere between then, whenever they get some warm rains. And warm rains in the winter is, a loose term.
Right.
Typically 50 degrees is that threshold. If it's 50 to 60, and that's, in a warm rain and a good rain, that's not hard to get in the southeast. And that's when you see a lot of movement and breeding and calling, all that.
Cool. We're showing our amphibian ignorance today, I feel.
I mean,
But it's fun to learn new things.
I definitely know nothing about things with legs. Everyone should know that by now. If it has legs, I don't know anything about it.
Salamanders barely have legs, man.
They still have
Some of them, yeah. Some of them only have 2 legs.
Still counts. Still counts.
Yeah.
Okay, so backing up a little bit, what was your degree in college?
Zoology.
Zoology. Okay, and I can't find my words. For our podcast, we always want people to learn about new animals and everything like that. But there's a lot of people who listen to our podcast that want to do a career in this. So as a field biologist now, if you could go back, would you do the zoology degree again? Or do you feel like there was another degree that would have lent itself better to what you're doing now?
I think I would have had a better GPA if I had done wildlife. But I don't think so. I mean, that's kind of a core basic. Either zoology degrees are rare these days. I even think at NC State have been lumped in with just biology undergrad degrees. But that's pretty much have to have that to get most jobs, even crappy $10 an hour temp jobs.
Did you ever have the idea that you wanted to go into a zoo or anything like that and be a keeper?
I did.
And
then you found
how much
out.
money they make. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't make a lot of money for a long time, so it was comparable. I did. My life, I've always wanted to study the animals as they are in their own terms, But I do see the value in zoo work. I have colleagues, when I was working, when I was with the Wildlife Resources Commission, I partnered a lot on my projects with the North Carolina Zoology or the North Carolina Zoo. And so they even had staff time come out and help radio track pine barren tree frogs. And we were doing head starting for gopher frogs. And I got them to take that project over. So
Oh, wow.
I think that was a huge win-win because my summer was spent doing that when I didn't get as much survey work done. And now that they could take that over and it was a thing that they could show for their AZA accreditation, that now my summer's freed up to do more field work. And their capacity is bigger than I was, so they could do more. So
tell us a little bit more about the Wildlife Research Commission.
Resources Commission.
Resources, sorry.
Yeah, I worked there for a few years. But it's our state's DNR, Department of Natural Resources.
Gotcha.
You may have heard of. I don't know what it is up north. Pennsylvania, or I don't know.
All the states are typically different. Yeah.
I lived in West Virginia for a while. It was DNR. South Carolina's DNR, but we are Wildlife Resources Commission. Florida is similar. They're Fish and Wildlife Commission. Similar entities. They are charged with a lot of things, but game management is one. They own properties that they manage. That's one of them. We call them game lands here. A lot of states call them WMAs. And then they have biologists that go out, and I was one of them that went out and did survey work. But yeah, it was a great job. I had no complaints. It was good organization.
Did you have control of like what you were surveying or like kind of your projects, or was it all kind of handed to you?
In those days, I was based in the Sandhills, so it was mainly that. But I was mainly the coastal plain too. So we did surveys on U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or not U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service property. We did surveys on Department of Defense property. Just ride roads in between, So it was mainly species that we thought there's some conservation concern or there's an unknown. And ornate chorus frogs and southern chorus frogs were in that category of we don't know what's going on with these species. And what we have found out is ornates are screwed in North Carolina. There's not many of them left.
Can you explain why that is exactly?
Outside of one piece of property, there's maybe 5 ponds in the state.
Wow.
So that's not much.
Is that just fragmentation?
Well, yeah. Most of the coastal plain is agriculture and development. Most of it ag. So you have areas where you have a lot of Carolina bays, and then they've been either cut over and filled and ditched and drained to make ag. So you get these little fragments, like the Nature Conservancy owns some, and they're just these little pieces here and there that dot the landscape. So there's no connectivity, or very little. And then you go from there all the way to like the coast, and that's 100 miles. Like nothing's crossing that. There's no genetic,
they're not getting there.
Travel. Yeah. So yeah, it's fragmentation's a big one, but there's continually less and less habitat. That's a big thing, because even when a lot of these surveys we compare to data that people from the Museum of Natural Sciences or universities did 30, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago in some cases. And that's how we can see that there's a decline going on.
Because they would pinpoint different spots that probably don't exist anymore.
Yeah. Yep. It's kind of sad.
Is it just like many other places where you're seeing amphibians imperiled first, or are there other animals that are imperiled in that region?
Usually the things that are most imperiled are things at the edge of their range or they're endemic. So what we call when things are at the edge of their range is peripheral populations. And so what you tend to see, ornate chorus frogs were found in a lot of states in the Southeast. But you started seeing like Mississippi populations, Alabama populations crashing, North Carolina populations crashing. So you start to see this, it's coming in from the peripheral. And I think of Georgia as kind of like, Georgia, ornate chorus frogs are, I wouldn't say common, but they're relatively common. They're secure. And so you see this kind of, that effect. Some species aren't like that. Gopher frogs, you see a little less of that. You see just kind of across the board, they're kind of getting screwed. And the same could be said for southern hognose. There's really only like 3 metapopulations, like secure metapopulations left. But yeah, so some of it's that peripheral effect, and some of it's just everywhere is getting sliced and diced.
Yeah, and I had no idea that southern hognose went up that far, to be honest. I thought you would have maybe like easterns over there or something. But
we got easterns too. But yeah, we got southerns, throughout a lot of the state, actually. Now, they don't still exist in a lot of that state, but historically.
Do any of your albums on your Flickr? Oh, never mind. Joe just pulled it up.
So is this an eastern?
No, it's a southern.
So how can you, because I've seen the ones that oh no, that would be a Mexican, I suppose, or I believe it's maybe the same thing. But how do you tell this from an eastern?
So the easiest thing that I tell people is the nose, the thing, the hog nose. They're much more upturned than easterns. And when you look at them side by side, and I don't know if I might have a photo on there, but it would be an older photo of them side by side. I know there's good examples out there. You can really see it. Southerns have a much more upturned snout. There's also differences with their with the ventral side, Easterns versus Southerns. But the nose is surefire. They're also chunkier. I don't know what it is about Easterns, but they don't seem as chunky. And the pattern, I know Eastern, I've seen spitting images where Easterns look almost just like a Southern hognose, but overall, that pattern is fairly distinct. You can get similar stuff with Easterns, but pretty much all Southerns look like that.
Okay, so there's not like different phases like you may see Easterns.
No. Now, in Florida and Georgia, I think you can get redder animals where that orange that's on that animal might be more of a red, but it's still the classic look.
Awesome. And there's a really cool timber rattlesnake right there.
Yep.
So is that something to where, do you guys call the timber rattlesnake in North Carolina, do you call it the canebrake or do you call it the timber rattlesnake?
We call it canebrake. Yeah. So
do you think that those should be, because I believe some people believe them to be different subspecies, or I don't know if completely.
It used to be. The subspecies was sunk a while ago. I personally don't think they should be a different thing. Because when you're really getting the nuts and bolts, like timbers range so far west, that you get a lot of canebrake things in other states. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like we have here in Pennsylvania, we have a black phase and what we call the yellow phase, and the yellow phase looks much more like your, canebrake.
Rattlesnake. I can see that. We do have timbers in our mountains. We don't have yellow ones like Pennsylvania. I know I've seen one in West Virginia that was really yellow. But we do get occasional black ones that are nice. But I spend a lot of time in the mountains, but it's mainly salamander hunting. I haven't really seen that many timbers in North Carolina mountains. It's kind of sad.
So is part of that, the difference is just that elevation? I mean, brings you a different coloration, or?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know the difference between the yellow and the black side. I don't know. But as far as the canebrakes, you just look at the habitat they're living in, and you kind of understand why they're that way. They truly are. Like in the South, we call them canebrakes. That's what they're living in. Bottomlands, swamps, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't mean to get that confused, because in PA you can find the yellow and blacks in the same exact spot. So it's just seemingly kind of random. But I don't know. It's interesting. They're just a snake that's found so far throughout the country and have a couple different looks, and people all over the place call them different things. And there's plenty of wives' tales and stuff throughout the South about all types of snakes. So it's always fun to talk about that.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. When I really got a lot of my start working with rattlesnakes in South Carolina, and down there, you don't say timber. They are steadfast in canebrake down there. But yeah.
So, and this is this a pygmy, or what is this right here?
Yeah, it's a Carolina pygmy.
And
a lot of people call those the lavender phase, but that's just typical of, basically there's a population out near Lake Mattamuskeet that's red, and this is more of what everything else in the state looks like.
Yeah, and if people can't see on the chat, I mean, this is just a crazy, it's often that coloration that people call like Amazon tree boa is lavender, but you say they're not truly purple.
I wasn't gonna say it. We always have an argument. Joe always sees way more lavender than I do. No, I see the smallest.
You can see where you get it. Yeah,
I see where they get.
But it also has these like crazy piercing red eyes.
Right. But hold up the lavender swatch next to that, and it does nothing. But the eyes are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that a lot of these snakes have the same coloration of this like pine straw that's on the ground there.
Yep. Yeah.
And just giving them like these awesome red colorations. And then this here would be a northern pine snake.
That one's an interesting looking one, but yeah, northern.
Are these pictures all from North Carolina?
Probably.
Yeah, that's almost by the tail there. That's a little bit, that coloration is typically indicative of like the southerns
It is.
or Florida's. And then the top is just super black, like you would see on, a very cool, like Kankakee bull or something like that. So that's a cool looking snake.
Very dark.
In North Carolina, sometimes you can get yellow animals.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen maybe 2, and they've both been dead on the road. But yeah.
And our Pituophis, it seems like you have quite a few pictures here, but are they relatively hard to find?
Yeah, they're pretty hard to find. If you really dedicate the time, you can probably find them, but, I had access to properties that were really good for them and methods that, the public, back then when I worked for the commission, that they don't have access to. So, and you see a lot of images, but that, I worked and lived down there for 3 years. That's what I did. So
that's an amalgamation of 3 years of work.
Yeah.
So what were the kind of, I guess if you don't mind talking about them, like what are some methods that you could use as a biologist that say, we wouldn't normally have as civilians?
So for game lands, like we had tin and board arrays on some of our properties. That's one. We didn't have a lot of it, but we had some of it. The problem with doing too much of that is people find it and take it, or maybe take your snakes. We don't know, but so a little bit of that, and then just knowing where the hot spots are.
And is that an animal that you're finding? Can you find them under a tin, or are they mostly hanging out in gopher holes and you just get lucky when they come out?
You get lucky. Yeah, they're not mostly hanging under anything but the ground.
So I guess that's always been a thing that's been widely talked about, as a fact that obviously the longleaf pine forests are imperiled in many different ways, and then so are our pine snakes. But then again, some people say, how are we going to correctly, survey this species or all the Pituophis when most of them are just hanging out in holes, 90% of the time?
Are we really getting an accurate
So what are your
representation?
ideas? Yeah, kind of in that vein.
People have had luck with drift fences. There's somebody in South Carolina doing drift fences with cameras, so they're not actively catching the snakes in the drift fence. Because the problem with drift fences is you get a lot of bycatch, and you get a lot of things die in drift fences. A shrew that drops in a bucket is going to die because they need to eat all the time for their metabolism. And so typically people don't really, I won't say don't like, but I don't like to put drift fences out. But I know in South Carolina they've had success putting camera drift fences out. So the snake can move in, takes a picture, and then they move out. And so no one has to check on it. Every so often, but not every day. And you get that image is emailed to you, and pine snake got in my trap. So that's been shown to be pretty good. I think other people are experimenting with that same method in other areas on different species. But they're so rare that I think the real information we've learned is through radio tracking them. I haven't done much of that work. A colleague of mine has done a decade of that work. That's really shown like where they hang out, how much time they spend underground. We've learned things about nesting activities with them. That's probably been the most beneficial body of work on them. Other than that, it's just, we did a market recapture study, but we started that in 2014. That's not long enough when you're only catching, I don't know, just a few a year to really tell you much. So that's more of a legacy thing that maybe they'll keep doing that. And they have kept doing that. So maybe that'll tell something down the line. But yeah, when you have a species you frequently see or you infrequently see so seldom, it is hard to understand the core of their biology and what's going on.
Right.
And in a lot of the way we rank species, we usually have a tool that looks at geographic range and how much of that has changed over time. So we have a lot of species in North Carolina. I can't say a lot. A few species in North Carolina that have been listed due to geographic change, not numbers of individuals changing, because we don't really know that with herps. Even
So is that
frogs.
like a different? Is it a different? What's the word, like
Right.
ranking?
What is a geographic change, basically?
No. Like there's the list for the the endangered animals by population. Like that's one thing you can go look up. Is it a separate like list, the ones that are endangered by reduction in geographic range?
No, it's
All lumped in.
So the one we used when we were doing this recently was from the IUCN. It was based on that list, so it's like 5 things, and one of them is population size. The other parameters and geographic range is what I end up using for some of mine, and some of our other species were listed that way, because you have, we know where we have fairly decent records in North Carolina of the historic distribution, and now we kind of know where they are. And so we can look at the historic and now, and how much of it changes that. Is it just a little bit? That's not something to worry about, maybe. But if it's, I don't know the criteria, but something like 50% or 20% or whatever, then you start looking at listing or whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah. And now, I guess can you dive in a little bit more on kind of what you found out during that time about the behaviors of pine snakes?
For me, they don't do much. It's hard. So when you're just marking recapture them, you don't really learn too much about the behaviors. You're just hoping that data pays off, that we're learning something about, growth rates, or we're recapturing juveniles when they're adults. We know something about recruitment in the population. Habitat-wise, they really need well-managed longleaf. And when I say well-managed longleaf, I mean something that's seen a lot of fire. And in the Sandhills, you have a lot of pyrophilic oaks, and they seem to really need those pyrophilic oaks.
So I can imagine pyrophilic means easy to burn.
Means they do well. They're fine with burning.
Oh, okay, so they can burn, survive, and regrow.
Yeah.
I've never heard that word, pyrophilic.
No,
like
neither
it.
have I.
Yeah, like fire. But yeah. So I won't get too much into plants, but some of the ones you may have heard of: turkey oak and longleaf. That's a pyrophilic oak. So a lot of people look at longleaf, and there is certain longleaf ecosystems where there's no oaks, but in the Sandhills, it's very much a pine oak scrub longleaf system. So those oaks are part of that ecosystem. And when you take them out, then you might have changes to what's going on with the animals.
So what exactly is it about that ecosystem? And we see it all throughout the longleaf pines, whether it's up in North Carolina, whether it's in Louisiana or Florida. It seems like they need the forest to burn and then obviously be regrown. Why is that so important for so many species? I mean, especially the herps.
It's important for the herps because it's really important for everything. The vast majority biodiversity in longleaf needs fire. It needs to keep longleaf the way we think of the ideal longleaf situation. You have really rich, very diverse herbaceous. So you got wiregrass, you get all these different grasses and plants and orchids in the ground. And then you just have longleaf pine as your dominant tree. And that's your typical upland. That is a successional state that you kind of have to keep it in through fire. A lot of people call it a disturbance. Fire disturbs that and keeps it that way. Because if you take fire out, what happens is a lot of the oaks grow up and you start getting it all shaded. Your forbs and your herbs die out or don't do as well, struggle. And because of that, you don't have the habitat that animals need. You don't have, I mean, it does the whole thing. The whole food web goes away. If you don't have a lot of herbs, rodents, crickets, all that prey source goes away. So it just disrupts everything. And when things disrupt, or even over time, it just leads to things declining. But I tend to think of fire and longleaf as not the disturbance. I think of removing it as the disturbance. Because naturally it burned. When humans came, we stopped it burning, we disturbed it, and fire suppressed it.
And now are there controlled burns going on in that area?
Yeah. Most public land, most of it has some sort of burn regime. Some range from very infrequently to very aggressively. Some are just checking a box. Yeah, we burned every 5 years. Some are trying to think of different ways to do it, ways to hit certain habitats to open them up. There's a lot of bottomland areas that people are trying to get fire in to open them back up. So yeah, a lot of game lands that WRC owns. Department of Defense is doing a lot of burning on their properties. The Nature Conservancy does a lot of burning on their properties. And there's a pretty decent private lands prescribed fire group in North Carolina that promotes fire on private lands. So it's pretty good, but there's still struggles.
Yeah, how are these people so good at controlling this stuff?
It's a science. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy that, I mean, you would think that people who live around there would be so freaked out. It'd be so hard to get them to buy into this.
Yeah, there are places where it's really hard to get fire done because smoke is going to hit, a housing area where there are $500,000 homes, and those people don't want fire, or, it's going to go over a highway. There's a project I've been helping with where it's a big Carolina Bay, and they're having troubles burning it because it's right next to a major highway. So,
yes, there's almost nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, it just depends. You get the right approach, maybe. I think they're working something out, but we'll see.
Our friend Ryan has a question. He said, now with people, are we seeing progression from longleaf pine to a more deciduous environment, which could be hostile to shade intolerant pines, therefore reduction of pine snake habitat? I don't even know what he's asking. I just read words.
Pines and pine snake habitat. Yeah, typically with longleaf, it tends to turn into a deciduous forest, but on the dry side. You don't tend to get red maples, that kind of mesophilic stuff. You tend to get like southern red oaks, a big one. Those kind of things start creeping up. Now, if that longleaf has any kind of water, like if it's a flatwoods, you will get sweet gums, are a huge one. We call them sweet gum forests, and we go. I've been to a number of historic sites where somebody would be like, "Oh, this used to be a gopher frog pond." I look at it, I'm like, "It's a sweet gum forest. There's nothing you can do." Because sweet gums have just overtaken it. Another one's loblolly pine, which isn't bad if it's where it naturally occurs, which is lower on like the bottomlands. But when it gets up in the uplands, it just seeds so aggressively, and without fire, those seeds just take up and shade out everything. So those loblollies are fairly easy to deal with, but sweet gums are a nightmare. There's several projects where we have sweet gums around wetlands that we just can't get. There's not a way to get fire through them. They don't burn well. It's just a pain.
Can't okay, sound like a dumb question, but you can't chop them down.
No, because they stump sprout. So you chop them over and they just sprout again. And by the next year, they'll be 6 feet high. I mean, they're just ridiculous. Yeah, they're a pain. And
so is keeping other type of like trees and stuff like that, is that just much of a concern of losing trees completely? Because you always hear like plant a tree, whatever.
Right? Would you rather have the wrong tree or no tree at all?
I don't know. It depends. If you're planting sweet gums in the wrong places, you're not doing any good. But most people aren't doing that. Yeah, you hear that. The prairie. I know a lot of people that have worked with prairies out west, and they're like, don't plant another tree. We need to keep this open. But yeah, in longleaf, if you manage it right, there's plenty of trees. There's plenty of ways for carbon to get synced in that ecosystem. But yeah, it's not so much how many trees you have that gives you how many pine snakes on the ground. It's what combination of species. It's really biodiversity. We're not managing for pine snakes. We're not managing for this. We're managing for very diverse areas. So typically, I was in a gopher frog pond looking at egg masses years ago, and I stepped on a chicken turtle, and a red cockaded woodpecker, which is an endangered species, flew over my head. And in that 1 square foot, there's 3 rare species right there. Wow. But it's because of that whole area and how well it's managed that you get all of that diversity. Pine snakes are in that area. Like there's a lot of things in that area.
Okay, silly question. Why is a chicken turtle called a chicken turtle?
I don't know.
Oh, I just looked it up. Never mind. The name chicken turtle refers to the taste of their meat, which used to be popular
there
in
you go.
summer markets.
Whoa. I mean,
Never heard of a turtle tasting like chicken, but okay.
Yeah, they're an interesting turtle.
Isn't that weird how like we've very much gotten away? I guess people in Louisiana still eat things like snapping turtle, but you know, Asian markets they still eat snakes and turtles, and we've mostly gotten
majority
away
of the world is
I guess.
not eating it. But then it's all I don't know. It also is like, why do we think it's weird to eat that but not eat the foods? You know, turkey.
Well, what sucks is that it takes them so long to get to sexual maturity, so
to
you
replace
can
them
very well, you know, decimate whole populations.
But like squirrels and stuff, I'd never eat a squirrel, but they freaking populate like crazy. But
yeah, they don't taste like chicken, really. It's a little bit tougher than chicken.
Yeah, it is.
This is coming from two people who have apparently tried squirrel, so you gotta try everything.
I've eaten squirrel. I don't like tough meat. And like quail, or no, I like what else? There's other pigeon.
I'm sure someone's Uncle Billy Bob they'll tell you that he can cook good squirrel or something, and his is tender. So I don't know.
Maybe someone's out there had a chicken turtle.
I don't know, you monster.
Who knows? But that's just so interesting that in that moment that you were in that pond, you experienced so many different things, and it's like also like to you. You acknowledge that thing. The average person's like wouldn't even catch those different things, much less know what a chicken turtle is or all these different things.
I tend to think of it as a different type of consciousness. Like I'm just in tune with that world, you know. But then it comes to birds, and there could be a whole different world there that I just don't know much about. Plants, I don't know. I don't know a lot about plants.
But it seems like you need to have at least a pretty good base of knowledge for
your job. Yep,
wide
range,
like everything,
right? Yeah. Not just like, you know. There's some people who are like only like this, you know, little species of bug they work on for 20 years of their life, you know. Yeah. But you seem to have such a wide range and you do so many various things.
I do. Yeah, it's been good. I kind of pigeonholed myself into a lot of herp work, but my job with Natural Heritage Program, I work with rare plants sometimes. We do a lot of what's called natural community inventory, and that's going out and identifying different forest types and stuff. That's been fun. That's where I've really learned the most about like what makes up longleaf, because I've been able to identify different types of savanna habitats and stuff like that. That's kind of neat.
Carolina has so many forests and trees and stuff.
She's trying to sell me I'm moving to North Carolina.
It just is funny that it so happened we had someone on the podcast from North Carolina right after I started trying to sell Joe on moving there.
That's funny. It's a great place.
Yeah. But we did move from Texas to Pennsylvania last year, so let's calm our jets here.
Calm our jets.
Nice.
I don't know. We'll be there or no. I'll be there soon.
Yeah.
I'll be there in November.
But do you guys do any through your job? Do you do like community education as well?
Not really.
Good for you. You don't mess around with little kids and stuff.
No. So I've occasionally helped with like Weymouth Woods State Park in the Sandhills has an event, Party for the Pine, and so I've helped with that. Where I took a gopher frog, a captive gopher frog, and we had like skins and pelts. It was a lot of different things going on, and that was neat. But I physically can't do a lot of that. I'm not a big kid person, so I don't know. But I do a lot of outreach in terms of in the professional community and even non-professionals. So I go out and give talks to herp societies. I give talks to regional groups. There's a Sandhills, Friends for the Sandhills group. I gave a talk to them. So I do that kind of thing. And I think that's really where people learn the most. You know, you talk to little kids, it's great to get people interested in nature, but super technical talks are just going to bore them. It's better to walk into a room with a snake and describe how cool a boa is to them to get them going. For adults, I think it can be immediately more impactful to get them interested. Oh, you know, this place that's in your backyard is actually really important, like globally important. You should that's an honor to live, that to be in your backyard. And then it gets them, it is. And then they talk to their friends. So, but I'm also a pessimist inside, and I tend to think of how much is that really going to change anything?
Yeah. But your whole work is tracking change.
But your whole work is
I know.
tracking change in the wrong direction. I think that's
Yeah, it is. Very rarely do I go, I wonder how this species is doing. I go out and I find it everywhere.
True. Kind of feeds into the pessimistic view, like, oh, there's even less. Oh, its range is even smaller.
It's also a self-fulfilling prophecy for me. Like, typically people are going to be like, we wonder how this species is doing, not because it's everywhere. Typically, because no one's seeing it. So, but yeah.
True. We don't worry about something in abundance, typically.
Yeah, typically.
Until it's too late. And then we're worrying about it.
But I mean, priorities, right? You should worry about the things that are struggling first. Unfortunately, they probably struggle until they don't exist. And then do
you have any, issues as far as, we see snake fungal disease and stuff like that, or chytrid in frogs and stuff like, do you have any viruses or fungal infections, anything going on in your natural populations there in North Carolina?
Yes. It's an interesting topic. There's been a few snakes in North Carolina confirmed with snake fungal disease. We actually, in 2016, there was a group of us got a grant. And the person that applied for the grant, the principal investigators with the Museum of Natural Sciences, but he gave us all these people all over the state that do field activities kits to sample for diseases. So we sampled for BD, the amphibian chytrid disease. We sampled for BSAL, which is the salamander-specific chytrid disease. We sampled for snake fungal disease. You guys there?
Yeah.
And we sampled for rhinovirus, which for people that work with frogs and turtles, that's kind of a big one in that arena. And so we did sampling for that throughout 2016. And the results of that are going to be published, I think, shortly in Herp Review. And I can't remember the results off the top of my head, but we did get we did get snake fungal disease in several. It wasn't a lot of it, but we did get it.
So is that, do you know how widespread it is at this point, if it's like a major player as far as populations of snakes?
It's been a while since I looked at that paper. I can't. As far as being widespread, it's kind of random more than it's widespread. So I don't know. But we typically don't see symptoms of it very often. Now, where I've done the most work, the soils are really dry, which helps snakes don't tend to present signs of any kind of scale rot or any of that stuff when the soils are really dry. It's really when they're in wet conditions, like we see it on the coast quite a bit. But it's hard to know what exactly is snake fungal disease from what is just a normal blister that is gone with a shed or two. And that's pretty common in wild snakes when they're coming out of brumation or hibernation. But we've had some test positive that didn't really have any noticeable signs that we think of. But we don't tend to get what people in the Midwest have gotten with Massasaugas, where they get really disfigured and they look like crap, and you can tell they're probably not eating because of it. I haven't seen that.
And that was something I heard was more of it's almost like the snake fungal disease messes up with the snake's ability to know when to brumate and when not to brumate. There was a bunch of, snakes coming out of brumation in the winter and dying. I didn't know how true that is, or that might not be as big of a problem in North Carolina. I don't know.
It could be. I don't know a whole lot about snake fungal disease, to be honest. It's kind of a mystery box for me, but it could. In North Carolina, there's a lot of species that reach that northern extent of their range, and I'm thinking of eastern diamondbacks, and it could really affect those because they absolutely require going underground. They're at their thermal limit in North Carolina.
And I don't keep any frogs or amphibians or turtles or anything like that. So what exactly would you call it, rhinovirus?
Rhinovirus, yeah. So I don't know the origins of it. I don't know a lot about the disease. I'm not a disease person. I just sample for stuff, and I've looked at it a little bit. But it is, I want to say it's more prevalent in frogs, but it is also in turtles. And it can go, I think, from frog to turtle. And what we've seen in the sampling is it's just kind of out there. We've seen lizards with it on them that obviously don't present signs because it doesn't really do anything to lizards, but they have them on it. So it's out there, but I don't think in North Carolina it's leading to any declines that we're seeing.
Gotcha. So yeah. I know we talked a lot about North Carolina throughout this whole thing, but let's talk a little bit of some international herping. So what was your first time out of the country going herping?
So first time out of the country herping was actually in Namibia.
Whoa, that seems like a difficult first one.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was when I was an undergrad, and I went as a study abroad trip for 3 weeks over to Namibia. And it was under my advisor, Dr. Heatwall. And it was in the winter there, so it wasn't like crazy herping. And it was more like learning about desert ecology. But we did look for herps. I didn't have any crazy findings. I had somebody shot a cobra like almost in front of me.
Oh.
Almost got to see a live cobra that trip. So that kind of stuff. But what I think of as my first like real time going out where everything was about herping was Ecuador. And that was 2008. So a little over 10 years ago. Yeah.
What were the circumstances that got you there? Was that just you literally went there kind of for a vacation?
Pretty much. Trip? So it was kind of a vacation, pseudo internship kind of thing. So the year before, I went out west the same time a friend of mine, Ross Maynard, went to Ecuador. And he went down, I can't remember the group's name at the time, but it is now what's called the Biodiversity Group. And he got back. He's like, you have to come next year. I'm going back. It's amazing. The herps are crazy. You got to go. So I was like, all right. So the next year came around, and when you're at that age, I was 25. Time was on my side. I had time. I didn't make a lot of money, so it was probably cheaper for me to just leave the country than sit around and pay rent or whatever. So, so I think I guess I didn't move out of my apartment then, but. So yeah, we spent 7 weeks in Ecuador. So it was fantastic. It was amazing.
Wow, that's great. And I see a lot of the pictures that you have here are different.
So I also recently went back to Ecuador for a second time this February. And a lot of those images are from that trip.
So were you, did you find a lot of amphibians? Was that kind of your main focus on that trip?
I mean, so this past trip this year was 100% vacation. I just needed to get out, not be at my job, not be at the house, doing something, finding something neat. And so we got hooked up with the Himaquaque Reserve out on coastal Ecuador. And the director of that reserve is also with the Biodiversity Group. And my friend Ross is now, 10 years later, is a scientific director of the Biodiversity Group. So me and him, and then my friend Kevin Messenger, who does work in China, he's an assistant professor in China, the Nanjing the University of Forestry. We all went out as a vacation and spent 2 weeks in Ecuador. And we spent most of that time on the coast, but then we went up to Mendo, which is kind of in the Andes proper. So, yeah, it was fun.
Cool. Next question is, what the hell am I looking at right here?
What is that? Wow.
This is one of my favorite salamanders ever. It's got the coolest name. It's called Bolitoglossa is the genus. Chica is the scientific name.
Say that again.
Bolitoglossa chica.
Bolitoglossa chica.
It's only known from 5 places, and this is one of them. And I found it in 2008. We found one at like the second only known location at that time. And then all these years later, we were able to find it again, which is pretty cool. I was really happy with that. I'm not wild about my photos, but
Is this in situ? Like, would it be on a
No.
leaf like that? Okay.
so typically, yes, they are on leaves like that. But we found this one on the ground. It's the only Bolitoglossa I've ever seen on the ground. So we found it on the ground, and then I took shots in this. We have this like pause to call it studio, but back because we're doing night hikes all night. So we typically things we really want to invest time in photographing, we take back, photograph at the lodge, and then we take back the next night. So that was when I was releasing it. I released it on that fern right next to where it was found.
It looks like.
What are you gonna say?
It's not like fully formed, or it looks like it stepped in.
Just started melting.
Yeah, it looks halfway melted, and then my third observation of it, like it stepped in like the stuff that like molds around, like shoot, what are them? Like it
slime.
Like it came out and then it just like stuck to it, like a cast was formed of the dripping of whatever. I don't know. It just looks like it.
Yeah, it's neat. They got like really webbed feet. Yeah, and I tend to think of like the coloration as wood grain. They look like a wood grain.
Yes.
It's a wild thing.
Are all of their eyes like that?
Yeah, I think so. That's a pretty light individual. They can be darker than that. Of course, they also change color a little bit. Like they just darken up sometimes. But
I'm gonna have to go look at a video after because I'm like, how does it? I can't envision how its mouth opens.
It has like a fish mouth. Like you would see that on a fish.
It's like blubbery, and the feet too. Like it literally looks like the feet are like wet or like they have like plasticine on them. Like
yeah, it's neat.
Are these things like, it looks like it would be not something that you would find on a branch or on a leaf or anything. It looks like something that would not move very efficiently. Like, are they faster than they look?
No.
No.
No, they're salamanders.
I have to take a picture of this thing.
Yeah. They're not like what we think of like with desmogs, the salamanders you typically find in creeks where they just like, zip out of your hand. No, they're not like that.
That
Low
is
energy.
a crazy animal.
Say the name again.
Bolitoglossa.
Bolitoglossa chica.
It's a very diverse genus. There's a lot of species. Some of them range, I think, I can't remember the name of it, but there's one that's like 8 inches long or something. So they range a lot. But they're very diverse in like Guatemala and that area. In the core of Central America, they're very diverse. In South America, you only get a few species.
That's amazing. And here we have, this is your favorite thing, the fossorial snakes that look like worms type of thing.
Like
or what am I looking at right here?
A worm.
So that's a Sicilian.
A worm.
So is it a snake?
No, it's a Sicilian.
I don't know what that is.
So you in amphibians you have frogs, salamanders, and Sicilians, and they're their own thing. A lot of people don't really know them because they only occur in the tropics. So in Central and South America, and then you get them in Asian, and I think they might get into a little bit of Africa, but they're mainly Asian. So yeah.
What is their biological difference from a worm?
So they're a vertebrate. Worms are not vertebrates.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they're really interesting. There's not a lot of information on them. No one really knows the core biology of Sicilians. There recently, I think, was some work looking at reproduction in Sicilians. I don't even know a lot about them.
Babe, what are you trying to zoom in on?
I'm trying to see if I can find any eyes on this thing.
Yeah,
Which one's the head?
I felt like I'd already asked like 3 stupid questions. So I wasn't going to ask where the face was.
The what you're supposed to do for wildlife photography is always focus on the eyes. But here's a species where that's almost virtually impossible.
Yeah.
You did get the right side though. That's its head.
It looks more like a fingernail.
A tail.
Yeah, that's the very top of it.
Like a tip of a tail. Wait, go back to it, babe. I just feel like I am learning so many new animals today.
I don't
feel like-
typically photograph stuff on white, but for this guy, we just couldn't. In habitat, they're just gone. They're just so fast moving. So that's the only photo I really have. I got a couple.
How
Just
long
read-
is it?
Oh, sorry.
Man, I can't remember. This one was pretty long.
But are we
2.5,
talking? Oh, really? Like
3.
2.5 feet?
maybe 3 feet.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Perspective is very interesting. I thought that was like a little worm. Okay. Do I just read like the dumbed down versions of books when I've read books about the different, like, the different types of amphibians, and the Sicilian has never come up.
Yeah, there are people
Yeah.
who live on
They're
an
people?
island in Italy
Oh,
or
I was
near
like,
Italy.
have you ever heard of a Sicilian?
That's the Italian version.
Well, the animal version.
No,
Why don't I hear about these?
Well,
we're bad hurt people.
They're not incredibly diverse. So in the U.S., we don't really talk about them. They're not here, and they're not very diverse, and they're only found in a few countries.
And we don't care about things that aren't here most of the time.
Well, I mean,
not all the time. But it's so interesting.
I don't even think you can own them. Like, no one keeps Sicilians. There's
So-
no hobby in that.
Someone in the chat said, click it, babe. Aquatic Sicilians used to be big in the pet
Okay.
trade.
There you go.
Huh. People used
There's probably a good reason why they're not big in
yeah,
the pet
what's
trade
the
anymore.
why?
How do I keep?
Probably.
How do I keep that creature alive?
Like, can't
Probably
even
hard to
find it.
breed too.
Yeah.
No. There's just, wow.
And it seems like you found a couple species. Are these glass frogs?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
is that one you took back to your little setup?
Yeah, we had Ross takes a lot of images on white because he uses them for various education and talks and publications. And so since we were in the lab, really the lodge, just taking photos, I tried to take a photo of each species in the white box as well. I'd never really done it. I haven't edited any of those, so you might see like dirt in the background. I just haven't had time to edit. So that's a really cool glass frog.
The eye. It looks like.
And he is bumpy.
That looks like Kermit.
What'd you say?
Yeah.
The eye makes it look a little bit more like Kermit.
It's just the like, I don't know what it looks like, veins in the eye. I don't know what those are, but it's so like the shattered eye look is very interesting to me.
So that one is critically endangered,
Okay.
and we may have found a new location for it.
Oh.
We're not totally sure, but we may have.
So just finding new locations, would that lead to it not be considered critically endangered anymore? Or are there many factors you have to check off?
How much
before
is
it gets changed?
understudied and
It would have to be
how
quite
much
a bit
is
of
fully
new
explored?
site.
You just can't find it.
There is that. In a lot of places, it's just understudied. There was a new frog described from this town, Mindo, which is like a bird central location for birders to go in Ecuador in like the last few years. So it's very easy. Places go underlooked. Herps go underlooked in a lot of places. So yeah, they could be found at more locations. This specific frog is just not known for many. And so maybe half of it's just not looking for it in the right places, or there's only a few places that have. I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about it. I just know we found it one night and we were all very excited. We had an idea that we might see it, but
And is Ecuador typically easily traveled? Or
Yeah,
what was I
it's
traveling there?
it's safe for the most part. Right now is not a great time to go because they're having some political issues. But most of the time, I've only ever had a couple problems, and they're very small problems. Nothing like going into Mexico. Nothing like going into places like that are truly wild, wild west.
Wait, so explain a little bit about Mexico.
Well, Mexico is narco land.
Yeah, I can get picked
Most
up
of
by the
Mexico
wrong
is dangerous.
people.
Yeah.
So
lot
where
of
was your
drugs.
first herp trip to Mexico? Where'd you go?
I went to Sonora, which is so I flew into Tucson, It's in Arizona, and then we just drove south into Sonora, and we just stayed in Sonora. So Sonora is pretty safe. It's not that crazy. It really gets crazier when you go further south, but yeah.
Oh, you found
Mexico's
another
awesome.
worm.
We have another Sicilian friend here.
Let's see.
Oh yeah. Different species, much smaller, much thicker. That one was on my first trip to Ecuador. You can probably tell because the picture quality is terrible.
Still way better
still
than
good.
any picture I would get. That's for sure.
You can kind of see its eyes in that one. I feel like maybe.
Almost.
That one was funny. We were walking around this reserve, and we were in the Amazon on that trip, so the eastern side of the Andes. And we were with this shorter girl, and she just wanted to go out for a night hike, so she came along. And me and Ross are kind of tall, and she goes, "Oh, I see a giant millipede." And we can't even see it because it's like her point of view is so low that we just see trees and branches. And I get a look at it, and it's a Sicilian. It's this thing coming out of the ground. It was the first one I ever found. I was floored, and I just grab it. I had to bag it, take photos of later. Typically, I don't like to bag things to take photos of later, but when you're doing night hikes and you're 2 a.m, you just kind of have to do it sometimes.
So what do you care? Are you just like throwing them in a backpack? Like after you bag them? What do you
and these we put in some sort of Ziploc bag, some sort of plastic bag, because they need that moisture. So we take a little bit of leaf litter, Ziploc bag. We tend to only hold things overnight.
That could get heavy if you find a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. And then I kept walking down the path, and I touched my eye, and it just caught on fire. Whatever's on their skin just irritated the heck out of my eye. And so I'm dumping all my drinking water on my face.
Wait,
is that anything that's like observed? Or
yeah, what is that?
I don't know what it is. I know what it felt like, though.
Some Sicilian. You think is that like a defense mechanism? Do you think that happens to like other animals?
I don't know. I don't know.
To eat it.
They just have a very, I don't know. They might need that layer as just overall protection, moisture, but I don't know if it's something where it just doesn't taste good. Definitely irritated my eyes, though.
That's so interesting.
Wow. That's a crazy creature.
I can't imagine there's too many people studying Sicilians out there to tell us more about it.
No.
Is that an ATV?
No, I believe this is some type of snail eater.
The eyes are so crazy.
Close. It mainly eats lizards and gnolls, but it's a blunt-headed tree snake. It's one of them. It's Hymentodes lentiferus. It's the Amazon specific blunt-headed tree snake.
Yeah, that's close. I got the word Amazon. I got the word Amazon in there.
So for people who can't see, who are listening to the audio version,
just can't listen to the audio version of this episode. You have to watch the video. There's just too many good pictures.
And this snake's eyes are pretty much the size of its head. It pretty much occupies the whole head.
Yeah,
and its neck is super thin.
I feel like it could be snapped at the neck very easily. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. They're very arboreal. Most of them we found were about eye height.
Looking down on everyone with its big, huge eyes.
That one was actually above my head. I actually dipped under the branch to go kind of under the branch, and Ross is behind me. He goes, "Dude,
there's a snake right above you." That's so wild. And I mean, are those very common or not so much?
Lentiferus, yeah, relatively. They're blunt-headeds. There's a more common species that is just very common. People find them southern Mexico, and they're in the Amazon. They're just kind of very, very, very common. Lentiferus is we only spent about 3.5 weeks in the Amazon. We found 3, I want to say, where we found a dozen or so of the other more common species. So.
And do they all have the same like color patterns or varying?
Yeah, they all look the same. The other species is darker and looks a lot different, but
yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, and something that I definitely didn't know went up that far north. You have here a rainbow boa.
Yeah.
I didn't think they'd be in Mexico.
No, that's in Ecuador. Sorry if that's confusing.
Oh, no wonder why.
Yeah.
That makes much more sense.
Did I put that in Sonora? Oh, my bad.
It's okay.
Well, I know there's something.
We know that one.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting one. So, blacktail rattlesnake, but in this area, individuals can look like the Mexican blacktail, the normal northern blacktail, or even what's called basilicus, which is like the western coast rattlesnake. They're all kind of the same thing, but so this one's kind of nice because it has diamonds. I don't tend to see real good diamonds on blacktails. I don't know. I thought it was an awesome animal.
Our friend Ryan asked if you guys found any velvet worms on any of these trips.
Velvet worms. I'm ignorant. I don't really know. Are you talking about velvet worms in the sense of the flat worm that has like really distinct antennae? I'm not sure exactly what a velvet worm is, but I kind of can picture it.
Well, Wikipedia
Anchaphora.
tells us it's Anchaphora. Ooh, it's so weird looking.
Ooh, no, I've never seen one of those.
Let me see. Oh man, I was
You
sharing
have to
the
switch
wrong
the
one.
tab.
Yeah.
But that was kind of what I was looking at or thinking of.
Do you know what you're doing, babe?
Apparently not. Sorry, I have to do this over again. We suck at this. We're all new.
Chrome tab.
Thank you.
Bell
All
Onion.
right, now you can
Chapar.
see this monster.
How do you
animal.
pronounce that?
Anchaphora.
Anchaphora. I feel like it'd be some creature in a cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen one.
Very interesting. What is their? Do you know if their range or go back to
Oh
Wikipedia?
no, we're gonna go through all this now.
Well, I just want to see. Wait, no, it's right up there.
There you go. That's a
Okay.
good part.
So right where everyone's been, but I've never heard anyone talk about finding them.
I don't know. People probably aren't looking for these crazy creatures.
I wonder if I feel like they would also have something weird that would hurt. Okay, another weird word I can't pronounce. Did you find any? Wait, let me try to pronounce it. Amphibian. Oh, I give up.
Yeah, no, we didn't find any in Mexico or Ecuador. I spent.
How do you pronounce it?
Oh, I don't want to butcher it either. Amphibians.
Amphibian.
Yeah. That's how I say it. They're saying it with the ID, meaning the whole group, but yeah, amphibians.
Okay. And is that something that's common to Mexico?
It's probably southern Mexico, but it's I don't know how quite to describe it. It's lizardy. Kind of its own thing, like Sicilian, but within Squamata. I think it's within Squamata. Anyway,
So did you have like a local guide or anything with you when you were in Mexico?
when I was in Sonora, no. Funny story, I knew of a herper that was going to be in one of the regions we were going to. And so I contacted him. I was like, hey, if we run in together, and he's like, it's Alamos. You're going to stay at the same place. We'll see each other. So I was like, okay. Well, I get down there, and he didn't tell me he was with a group of 16 herpers.
Wow.
Whoa.
So just me and my friend Ross just going down for a couple weeks in Mexico. And first place we stayed, there's 16 people looking for herps.
Wow. So is that a common hotspot for people looking?
I guess
Not
if there's
that
16
hot.
going.
Not that hot. Now, they had all kind of gone together. So it wasn't like 16 people on their own little trips. It was one big group of people. So, yeah, probably not commonplace to run into other herpers, but not out of the, not super rare either, I guess. One of the guys
That's a big group.
Yes, it was. It was too big almost.
That's what I was thinking. I feel like I almost wouldn't want that many people.
Yeah. Me and Ross, we kind of stuck to ourselves that trip. But yeah. And then we went up to the mountains in Sonora, and you guys just interviewed a guy, GJ, recently from the Netherlands, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, he was on that trip, so I ran into him, met him.
Oh, no way!
Yeah. He's really
funny.
That's very weird and small world.
Yep.
Now he's had some interesting Mexico experiences.
He has. Yep.
So you didn't encounter anything weird?
No, not weird. But me and him, so him, Ross, and a couple other herpers split from that big group, and we went to the mountains, and we found 3 specimens of a very rare snake called Theportcitypythons is the genus. I can't remember the common name, but and it's only been, we found the 5th, 6th, and 7th known specimen ever.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's really crazy. We got a little publication that came out in Herp Review off of that.
Joe tried to type in that Latin name and it came up with some weird foreign cartoon. We're trying to find. He tried typing Theportcitypythons to bring up the common name.
I can't pronounce it. I butcher it all the time. Here it is. That's it. Oh, it didn't work for me either.
Is it a dwarf boa?
Theportcitypythons? No, it's a bluebirdy thing.
Oh, dang it. I thought I found it. I typed in how I thought you spelled it and then Mexico, and the dwarf boa is what came up. But I guess it's not that.
One of the cooler boas I've seen is the I just lost the name. Why has I said that?
Where'd you find it?
Tracky boa.
Oh, that was right there.
Those are really neat.
Mm.
Whoa, they're so bumpy.
Tracky boas?
Or I don't know if that's the right picture. Nope. A northern eyelash boa?
Yep.
They're so bumpy.
It's almost like some of the Candoya, like a Paulsoni or something. Yeah. But the face is totally different. The eyelashes and they have like these ridges on the nose and stuff.
No, I feel like it's like a monitor for, like not the face of a snake.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the face of a snake. It's very weird. Hangs out in little creeks and little rocky creeks and streams. It's definitely unique.
Whoa. So how did you first, I lost the question I was going to ask, but
is it a very different, this is a dumb question. Let's say, is it a very different experience herping in the mountains versus on the flatland? And it obviously is, but like, I don't know how to ask my question either. We're both terrible.
I feel like being more remote wouldn't help you any. It would make me a lot more nervous, at least going into the mountains by ourselves. And
yeah, it definitely has that. In Mexico, it's a little nerve-wracking because there's narco activities and stuff like that going on. And there's people that just, I don't know. You just have to be on your toes, be aware. We were very fortunate when we went to the mountains in Sonora that we stayed with a local Catholic monastery. So that was nice.
A safe space.
Yeah. But yeah, tracky boas are amazing. And again, they're in the Chaco region of Ecuador and Colombia.
Oh, bring it back.
A very distinct spot on the globe.
Yeah, this is a super unique snake.
And it looks like the eyes are different colors, right? That first one, the eye was red. Or I don't know if that's just the way the sun is hitting it. So very interesting.
So let's talk about Baja California, sir.
Baja California, sir, is awesome. That trip was pure vacation. It was me and my girlfriend. It was that kind of a vacation. It wasn't like dedicated herping. We were going to do some leisure activities. We were going to go snorkeling, do couple activities, that kind of stuff.
But of course, herping has to be a part of it.
Of course.
But you found probably, at least that North American herpers would want to see, especially people who are into colubrids. You saw the Cape gopher.
Yep. Last night of the trip, too.
Melissa's new favorite snake. Pull it up.
So is that a commonly found snake?
It's relatively common.
Okay.
I shouldn't say common. I don't really know. Yeah, I'll say relatively common.
I guess if you can go there for a week and snorkel and do all that stuff and still find one, I mean, maybe it's you either got very lucky or it's a little bit common.
Just the
Well, we
red.
definitely had rough circumstances. We definitely it was slow herping. We had nights where we didn't find anything, and that's always frustrating. But the last night, we were going to fly out that morning. The last night we found that, and a rosy boa, a live rosy boa, finally. So that was
You're
nice.
probably gonna make fun of me for this because it's a stretch, but I think the reason why I like these is the coloring going from that red to that like brown reminds me of the Swiss line blackheads that I like a lot. And I know you're gonna make fun of me
Except
because
that looks
they're nothing like I
black.
know they're nothing like a blackhead. But do you see what I'm saying? The red blending into the brown,
Right? Which happens with a lot of like Pituophis. It just doesn't.
but
They don't usually
look
have
like
red
that.
in it.
Yeah, the red, because I like red in it, and that's why I like the Swiss line blackhead so much, because that red is so strong, and I love this strong red. And then the head is just awesome. There has to be. Where can I find these? Someone find them for me.
Yeah, you can find. This is actually, to be honest, one of the best looking individuals I've seen, and having seen line bred animals in captivity, you would think we have better looking individuals, but this one's pretty top notch.
Yeah. I was excited. I didn't think it would look that good when I found it.
And then, I mean, rosy boas. Have you found rosy boas in California before, or have you found them in other locations?
Nope, never herped California. I mainly stick to New Mexico, Arizona when I go out there. So yeah, I found a dead one, and then immediately I found a live one. Those are the only two I've ever seen.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And really awesome, like cream peachy color with very black lines.
I like those better than the more commonly photographed ones in California.
Which I think people would usually, I mean, they can be super colorful in California.
They can.
But these are like super contrasty.
I might be partial because I found that.
Right? You like what you found?
Yeah. But yeah.
I guess the one thing that I love that is the Baja rat snake. So were you looking for those, or?
Yeah, that was on my wish list. I did not get that. That was very unfortunate. I went up and down.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we spent the most time in the area where a number of them are found. So the Laredo area. We spent like 8 days there.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah. That's Cabo Plumo. That's where we went snorkeling. And that
how inhabited is it?
Not very inhabited. That right there is actually Santa Catalina, the island out in the Gulf of Baja California. And so that's where the endemic Crotalus catalinaensis is from, the rattle-less rattlesnake.
Oh, so did you end up finding one of those?
Yeah, that's not it.
That has very much has a rattle.
Yeah, that's Mitchellii. Yep, there you go.
Okay, so I'm a noob and I know nothing about the rattle-less rattlesnake. Give a basic kindergarten level explanation.
So they've evolved to not have a rattle.
Is it just because so many people, or like what is the adaptational benefit?
You see a lot of interesting evolutionary things occur on islands. There's a whole study on biogeography, island biogeography, and it's applied to other things like high elevation sky or island or mountains that are kind of like islands in the sky. But typically evolution does some interesting things on islands because you only have a fixed amount of individuals. There's not much migration of genes, and so in this population, they just evolved to not have a rattle. And I'm guessing what happened is it just worked. There's no need to have a rattle. There's no, I'm not sure what really brought about the rattle, maybe big-hooved animals or predators, what have you, but there's no need for it, and they don't have it. maybe there is even a deleterious effect if you have a rattle on that island. Maybe you'll get more likely to get eaten by something. I don't know. Just spitballing, but
I know what deleterious means now because of Travis Weinman, and it makes me excited.
That's good. So are there other snakes on that island? Is there different are there any that are particular to that area or different than, say, like a mainland animal or something?
Yeah, the desert iguanas are their own subspecies there. I want to say the night snake is its own species. It's there. And then there's a couple things that are their own there. And then, of course, there's plants. Like there's a barrel cactus. That's the Santa Catalina barrel cactus. Doesn't occur outside of that island. But yeah, and it's one of the more remote islands, so you can start to understand why there's so much unique species on the island, because it's, I don't know how many miles, but it's one of the further islands to get to.
And that's an island that you need to have particular permits to get on, correct?
Yeah, so it used to be fairly easy to just go to the docks, hire a guy to take you out there and pick you up the next morning. You could camp out. You can't camp on the island anymore without permits. And to go to the island, you have to go through a process now with the government. And even in the U.S., governments tend to be slow to do stuff like that, especially when they just made up their mind that that's a new law. And so we had a really good company that we were trying to work through to get to the island. And he was like, I'll reach out to them. I'll see what they say. And they wanted to have a meeting with me. They wanted to send a government representative with me to make sure I didn't touch any snakes, which is just freaking ridiculous. I mean, I kind of get it. If you don't want people poaching these things either, I'm sure I don't know how much they go for on the market, but I'm sure they're not cheap animals.
There's someone out there looking for them, unfortunately. Yeah. They're
unique enough. And so you don't want people just poaching them. You don't want, somebody going out and doing whatever. It's isolated enough. And so, yeah, they wanted somebody to walk with me, which just made photography hard, would have made interacting hard. You don't know if they'd be loosey-goosey or, stiff rule. You got to be here. You can only be here an hour and a half. So I said, you know what? I was about to cancel the whole thing. And I said, okay, we'll have a meeting with them and see how it goes. They didn't show up to the meeting. So the tour company was like, just go out there. And so we spent 3 hours on the island, which is not a very long amount of time. And by the end, when we got picked up, you about couldn't stand the island. It was so hot. There's no shade. Like the rocks you're like huddling under, just the sun rises and there's no shade. But we got 3 snakes in those 3 hours, and all 3 of them, were within the first hour. So that was cool.
Sounds like good luck. Yeah. I mean,
it was great. I was really hoping we'd get just one would have been fantastic.
And is that something to where there's not many people there? Is that what helps you out? Are there a lot of snakes there, or did you get straight up lucky?
I think the populations are pretty healthy there. So I think I also got luck. I lucked out because sometimes you can go somewhere where something's very abundant and still just not get it. Either that day is just not that right day or whatever. And whenever I find something I'm actually looking for, I just consider it lucky, even if it was like meant to be or, perfect, ideal temperature or weather. It's lucky. You go looking for something, you find it. It's crazy.
How do you really go about like planning out a trip like that or somewhere that you've never been?
So Santa Catalina, I knew a couple people that had been there. So I contacted them. Unfortunately, most of that info was dated. Even just a couple years, things change. But I reached out to a guy that has research contacts down there on Santa Catalina, and he had just been out there like the year before, so he put me in touch with this tour guide, and he says they're good. The people, the easy guys to get, they're fine, but this guy actually is like legit business, insured, all that stuff. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then when push came to shove about all the regulations, it really helped to have somebody that was above board and somebody that knew my interests too, because he knew this other guy, and he knew, that guy wouldn't be recommending me if I was just an idiot, So some of it's networking, and some of it's also just really researching where you're going to go, like in advance. And it doesn't have to be like a year in advance, but just understanding it. And as far as the snakes, that spot was just kind of luck because the only place he could really drop me off was a good spot to go look for him at that day. But yeah. All international trips are a lot of planning. Baja's easy because it's a lot of people go there regularly. There's a pretty good international airport in Los Cabos. I mean, it's a famous beach resort area, and it's safe. We road cruised until 2 a.m. a couple times, and just no one's on the road. It's safe. A lot of Mexico, you just can't. You don't want to be doing that. But yeah.
Was the cost to get to the island anything crazy?
No, it wasn't crazy. It was definitely like right on the edge of where I was like, man, I should be spending all this money for one snake. But I don't know, man. It was the best overall day of the trip. Like going to we left before sun, so we got at sunrise. It was a very long day. But on the way back, we saw pilot whales. We saw a feeding colony of dolphins. It was probably like 50 or more dolphins in this big feeding pod. So it was just like, and my girlfriend's really into marine mammals. So it was just overall a pretty awesome day. And our guide was really cool. He brought lunch for us. It was awesome. It was fun. And it wasn't that expensive. I'm a cheap person. So when I say something's expensive, it's for a lot of people, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, it wasn't in like the thousands of dollars or anything.
Tell Joe it's expensive because clearly he's asking as a potential trip in the future. I feel
it's just something that's interesting because it's obviously not far from, say, California, and it seems like it should be relatively easy to get to, but I feel like a lot of people don't go there, and I thought that there were more barriers there than there seems to be.
Yeah. I mean, overall, to go to Baja for 2 weeks, most people, it is kind of expensive. It was my most expensive thing I did all year, but that was my highlight of my year, was to go there. So, to get the flight, to get the rental car, to go to the town, to hire somebody to boat you out there, that all, if you went to Baja for that one snake, that's an expensive snake. But you go to Baja to eat it, to eat good food, to, get fish tacos, to snorkel, to find all the other snakes, so then it's not that bad. But it's not, it's way more expensive than going to like Ecuador. You can go to Ecuador on a budget.
Really? Because I feel like we talk to so many people, they usually say Costa Rica.
Yeah.
We can find flights for like $250 to Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's cheap.
And it's like, that seems like such an easy trip. But someplace maybe even a little bit closer, like Baja, seems to be just a little bit more difficult. But
yeah, what's high on my list is Cuba. Cuba's been high on my list for a while.
We had Jeff Lem on not too long ago. He has a trip that they go down to Cuba.
Nice.
So yeah, it seems like an interesting place. Obviously, like just opened up. And he said even people can't go to herp there anymore, but they have some type of bird watching permit or something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But I saw a kind of randomness. Is this a black and white mud snake? Is that what that is?
Yeah, anarthristic mud snake.
I've never
# morph.
I've never seen a red and white. I mean, a black and white one.
Yeah, it's neat. I've seen 2, and one was a gravid female that was just obliterated on the road, and then that one.
So is this a locale thing? Do you think there's like a small locality of these?
It seems to occur throughout the range. I know of records in North Carolina. Well, I found one in North Carolina. Florida, this was a Florida animal. I know of them in South Carolina. And that's just the ones I know. So I'm sure they're more out there. But I know of people that go this area all the time and they've never seen one. So I don't think it's a super common thing.
Right. It's just, it seems like, I mean, you're taking a snake that's probably one of the most naturally beautiful snakes and then taking out what's beautiful about it.
Yeah,
But
and it
but
works
it's
kind of.
cool too.
Yeah,
And it seems like something like an Anery mud snake, which is predominantly still black. It's just the belly's getting that creeped up white onto it and stuff. You know, it seems like it would survive just as well as in the same area. There'd probably
Yeah.
be an eastern kink snake that looks somewhat like it, or a black kink snake that looks somewhat like it. So,
yeah.
so I can imagine that they wouldn't have that much of a. It's not like it's a bright yellow or red snake now, and
Yeah.
it can't camouflage
It's also
itself.
a mud snake. They live in a lot of they live in the water all the time. So I assume that the difference in red and white wouldn't be that big of a difference.
Still
You know,
covered by brown
on
mud.
survivorship.
Yeah, but what a beautiful snake and what a unique individual that guy is.
Yeah, that thing was awesome. That was the highlight of that trip.
Have you found any other morphs in the wild?
I found an albino spotted salamander in West Virginia. So that was kind of cool. I think that's the only albino herp I've seen. But not really. I've seen some things that might be hypo, but not like crazy or anything.
What's that?
I've looked for the anarthristic corns, but I've never found them.
So, is there a certain locale known to produce anarthristic corns?
Yeah, it's in Florida.
Okay.
The one I know about. There's an area in Florida that produces them.
And what are we looking at right
Yeah,
here?
that thing, it's dead, unfortunately. If you can't tell, but
Oh, wow.
I could not tell.
yeah. Eastern Garter, near the Mattamuskeet area in North Carolina.
Okay, I don't know that area of North Carolina. Where is that?
It's in the northeastern coast. So not like down, not Wilmington, but like north and east.
Okay, yeah, I don't go
And
up there.
there's not a lot up there. It's mostly ag. But now I've seen a lot. I've seen some garter snakes up there. Most do not look anywhere near this thing.
For people listening on the downloads, this thing is
Fire.
red. Like
It
on
is on
it's the
fire.
erythristic animals that you see in captivity. You know, the garter snakes that we have in captivity, but it is in the wild.
Yeah.
Was it dead on the road?
Yeah, it was hit on a highway.
Bastard.
I wasn't even cruising. I was just
That's
getting
so
point A to
wild.
point B.
Wow,
What's
that's
the-
an amazing.
What's the
snake.
total range of garter snakes?
All over the
Oh,
place.
is it just all over? Okay.
Pretty much all over the country.
I mean, you at least got your species wherever you are. You probably got one. Found one down Schurz the other day. It was
What?
It went down
Oh,
the sewer.
I see him. What am I saying?
Yeah.
I don't know why I said what. We see him in the city all the time here.
Which is weird. Yeah, I see decays here and I see garters here all the time. We live like in the city.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
Yeah, the people seem to stomp on them in the sidewalk, so that's how I always see them. I saw a dead DeKay's brown like on our block, and
on our block.
yeah, it must have came off of someone's garden, and someone smashed it because people, and then today I saw one that was cut up. It was smashed and then cut up like a little psycho did it, but it was a garter snake with a lot of like blue on it.
I see garter snakes.
But yeah, I saw a big garter snake.
Really?
Yeah, like a fat one come out of a.
Huh.
Then he went
That's
down in the
eating
sewer
something.
when he saw me. Probably a she, but
Why do you? Oh, because of the size.
it's huge.
That's so interesting. I've never seen one on fire like that. So, what is your favorite spot to herp in North Carolina?
Or in general.
I like
Well,
to
you
go
can't
to
say in
places,
general because there's going to be a big difference between in general and in North Carolina.
I like to go to places that are kind of don't get attention. So like you go to places like the Sandhills, there's on the right day there's like 8 cars on a dirt road. That's not fun. Like it just gets overherped. So I like to go to places that there's not a lot of records, not really on the map, and it's kind of like between Robinson County and like Pender County. Like that's my favorite area. It's not like you're not going to find a lot of crazy stuff, but any rare thing you find is usually a pretty big deal. So.
And what is your favorite place to herp in general?
I'm going to have to say North Carolina, but well,
Nice.
if I had to select a place in the world that I want to go to the most, hands down, it's Southern Africa. Hands down.
Really?
Oh, hands down. Yeah, they have it all.
What would you be looking to see in particular?
So a lot of the dwarf Bitus. So Bitus, genus Bitus, like puff adders and gaboon vipers are all in that genus Bitus. But there's a lot of small species. I found a couple roadkill Bitus claudalis, which is the horned viper, horned adder. They call them adders over there. But there's a lot of these small ones. There's the mini horned adder, which is really cool. That's what I would really go after. But Southern Africa has a lot of really neat stuff. It has a lot of different cobras. It has spitting cobras. It's got mambas. It's got crazy amount of gecko diversity. It's a fantastic place.
Sounds like there's a lot of ways to die. So be safe.
Yeah.
So is that something that, would you like to do that for work, or do you think you'll get over there for just a vacation or something like that?
Definitely not for work.
They're not
My
sending
work
him out there.
is 90% North, or actually pretty much 100% North Carolina, since I work for the North Carolina government. But I do occasionally get into South Carolina because we have partners that work on the same species. So sometimes I go down there for meetings and stuff, but very rarely. But Namibia would just be a passion. Not Namibia, Southern Africa. South Africa, Namibia, Swaziland, all that. Would be more of just a passionate thing. I just want to go. I went when I was an undergrad, but I got just a little bit of a taste. I want to go back and quench my thirst. See a lot of different unique stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Do you have any interest in like the mammals there and
Yeah.
all the awesome megafauna, I guess you
I
could
would
call
love
it?
to see. I think leopards would be the thing I would love to see the most. Would be a leopard, and wild dogs are really neat, or painted dogs, however you say it. But
I don't.
Yeah.
That sounds for wild dogs. What?
Does that not sound exciting
That
to you?
doesn't compute.
Oh,
in
They're
my head.
savages, though.
you should see them.
Yeah, let's
Wait, like I feel like I'm missing something. It's literally just like a dog that's outside. Like what?
not exactly.
Just Google wild dogs. There's only, I think, 1 or 2 packs of them left in all of Namibia. They're getting very rare.
Doesn't even look like a dog.
Nope.
That's not a dog. Let's not have the same name. They do not deserve to have the same name as dog. That is a different
You gonna call
animal.
him a wild wolf?
It's almost like a hyena look to it.
Right. It looks like a hyena hybrid.
Yep.
Those ears.
Yep.
I feel like I'm like the wolf in Red Riding Hood. Like, what big ears you have? But what?
Look at that.
But then their
nuts,
legs
they're
are
crazy.
so skinny.
Yep.
Yeah, it's almost like
Yeah,
this one
those
has like
can't
bare
be.
ears.
Those can't be
It's,
called dogs. That's not.
You want to pet them?
No, you do not want to. No, they are not cute. Those look ferocious.
Oh, we get the teeth on that one.
Yeah, no, not getting anywhere close to that.
But they'd be neat to see, though, from afar.
Man, and they are, awesome looking animals, though. They serve the same niche as like hyenas. They
Kind of.
scavenge and stuff like that.
Yep. They're hyenas, I guess, are group based, but they just seem to be very big packs of them.
So cool. So if you could see any herp in the wild, just one, to be your dream animal, what would it be?
A tie between probably mini horned adder from Southern Africa or one of the long-tailed rattlesnakes. which if you don't know what those are, there's
Okay, now we have to look up all these pictures because we don't know what they look like. A mini horned adder.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're not all that rare either.
The tongue. I like the tongue. That is cool.
So you can see why they're called the mini
horned
adder.
Some names actually, are pretty obvious.
And they're Bitis cornata.
Yeah.
Kind of like the like Cyclora. Like a rhino, iguana would be with the horn. I like when things like that cross
I like
over.
when things are horned. I think I like things.
Yeah, but that's a super awesome animal.
Yeah, and they're not big. They're just these small. I like small rattlesnakes, small, vipers.
Gotcha.
Wow, you have seen so many different animals in your life already.
Yeah.
Would you ever, I don't know, write a book? I know that's a big leap, but
I don't know. I struggle with writing. I write so much for work. Maybe. Yeah, I consider it. Definitely a chapter.
Right. I mean, I just think I think so many herpers have so much to tell. That just even just a chapter, like a compilation of herper stories, I think would be so interesting. And then it might be out there already, and I just don't know it exists.
Craig Trumbauer has 2 books on his herping stories, and we have them downstairs if you want to read
them. I should, but how old are those?
Or
how old are those books?
No, they're in the last 15 years, 15 years. And then also
stories are aged, but yeah.
And then we got snakes and snake hunting. That's in there.
I just think it should be I don't know, every year thing of a compilation of herp stories, because I think there's just so much. Even you saying, it's the second one that's ever been found of certain species, and
that's
that.
Wild.
There's stuff like that is not made headline news, but it's a headline. Finding this second one is a major thing, and I think that should be recognized more. And when we find freaking webbed-footed, I already forgot the name of the chica thing, that animal is so wild. Stuff like that. You put a picture, that is an alien, right? If I put that on Facebook right now, I feel so many people would be like, what is that? Alien, so many interesting things people don't know about. And so books are the way that people learn about them.
Or you can go to Nathan's Flickr.
You go to his Flickr. So that should lead us, Nathan. If someone wanted to reach out to you or wanted to see more of your pictures and everything, what is the best, or where should they go?
Flickr.
Flickr.
I really wish I updated it more. In the last few years, I've just gotten slow, full-time, real jobs type stuff. But I do try to put images there every so often. So that's the main place. I am also on Instagram. I have a private account that was meant in the beginning just for my family and friends, but I've toyed with making that public, or making a public account. I might do that in the future. So maybe
you have so many great pictures. You definitely should have.
All right. So a common thing that we see among herpers also is that they have amazing pictures and they don't like to post them. They don't have Instagrams.
Yeah. So when I first got my Instagram account, it was 2014. It was just cell phone images. It wasn't even herp based. There are a lot of herps just because my life is formed around that. But my intent was just to have family and friends have something separate than Facebook that, is just people I interact with, high school friends, whatever. And I have so many herpers that try to follow me. And I commonly think about making a public account, just because I share sensitive data that shouldn't be made publicly available, stuff like that. But yeah, maybe I'll do it soon. I don't know.
Is there special care taken to not show surroundings of these animals?
Oh yeah. There's a couple images that you could probably know exactly where that animal was found by looking at it, if you knew that area. But typically I don't. I used to do a lot of what we used to call herp and habitat, where you got the herp in the corner and you see the whole habitat. And I've stopped doing that because people can point and be like, you're exactly right there. And over the country, it's not like a huge thing, but there's certain places that just get so much herper traffic that it's not even anymore about people collecting the animals. It's just like X number of people can go to this site maximum. Like more than that, it's just trampling on vegetation. That's important. Like we have issues with gopher frog wetlands and other rare amphibians that people just every year go in there and they're like, while the frogs are calling and trying to mate and do their thing, catching them, taking photos, and it's innocent. They want to just get a photo of a gopher frog, or any rare animal. But in those moments when you have frogs calling, that is specifically they're trying to do a specific business, and you going in there is interrupting that. As innocent as it is, but then somebody else, the next night might come in there and do the same thing. So a lot of our surveys try to take that into account. We don't try to go out there and have to get a photo of an individual for a voucher. Acoustic is fine because we don't want to mess with them while they're doing that. So it's a hard thing to balance. So there's a lot of times that I post things or I don't post things, like trying to think like certain species that call in the winter. I won't even post them until it's July because I don't want people to be like, oh, they're going right now. We need to go to the pond. Because it just draws too much attention, which is unfortunate, but it's how things are. And I think most people approach it in an innocent, like I just want to see the thing, I want to learn more about it, I just want a photo, and that's great. But it's just bad when so many people at one time bombard an area.
Right. Yeah, we've heard that. We've heard that from so many different people. And if you lay a tin down and then you have 4 other people check it day after day, and then you're gonna get your
that's pointless.
That's a pain.
At least. Right.
Yeah. Yep. So Nathan, thank you so much for being on. Right. For us, Port City Pythons, portcitypythons.com, Port City Pythons on Instagram, Facebook,
YouTube.
We have YouTube. Shirts and
shirts available
animals.
And snakes available.
Other than that, that's really all we have for you. Hit us up if you want to put stickers up on the wall behind us. And once again, Nathan, Shepard, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me.
So much. Have a good night, everybody.
Sicilians.
Travis Weinman calls them wormphibians.
Wormphibians.
And I like that. Okay.